Trump is increasingly pushing the US into a situation where a positive outcome of the war is becoming more and more difficult. The US military is sending 2 amphibious battle groups with Marines and an airborne division to the Persian Gulf. Another 10,000 soldiers are being considered for deployment at this point. It is now likely that the US will occupy Iranian islands in the Gulf. But instead of bringing the war to a successful end, the occupation, especially of the oil island Khark, can only lead to ever-increasing costs in the end, without achieving victory. That's what we'll discuss in this video. Holy says you can now save the most at Holy with my code. Donald Trump wants to open the Strait of Hormuz as quickly as possible to keep oil prices low. His attempts to force that by attacking power plants have failed, and since then, he keeps talking about negotiations and extends the deadline again and again. So the deadline keeps getting extended. That shows us, but of course also Iran, that Trump is looking for a way out, especially because the bombing of power plants would lead to responses from the Iranians, which the Gulf allies would consider catastrophic. One of the steps toward a way out is the offer of a treaty. But Trump's 15 points are effectively a capitulation of Iran, even if Iran is offered proposals that go a bit further than what was offered to it at the start of the war, or before the war began. But if Iran loses its proxies and is left with a massively reduced missile arsenal, then its deterrence is gone, which is what enabled Iran to have its strong negotiating position in the first place. The nuclear program is also supposed to be maintained, of course, because they at least want to have the option for a nuclear weapon in the future. But for that, they have to keep the capability to theoretically build them if needed. With nuclear weapons, the attack probably wouldn't have happened now. Tehran is likely to believe that. Iran also doesn't want to give in, and instead is making its own maximum demands. But you should also expect the best, especially in your drinks taste. Luckily, today's sponsor can help. I've been working with Holy for 3 years now, and during that time, their energy drinks have kept me awake during long live streams. Lately, I've always been drinking Cola Koala, and that was a limited edition that's now being added to the regular lineup. So now Cola Koala Energy is being added, but also Blue Raspberry Hydration is joining the lineup. What is Holy? That's a powdered drink mix you shake in a bottle like this, then drink immediately. And you can really enjoy it. No aspartame, no sugar, no taurine, only natural colorings, only natural flavors, and all of it under 20 calories per half liter. So it's absolutely diet-friendly too. Now there's a great offer. The Starter Set Deluxe, which is perfect for you to try out Holy, comes with an extra pack of 10, either Blue Raspberry Hydration or Energy Cola Koala. Personally, I'm a huge fan of hydration. In my opinion, you really can't go wrong with that. And now you get 10 extra servings. So with code Torsten Heinrich, 67 servings now cost only €54 instead of $59.99. So use code Torsten Heinrich. Save 10%, support the channel at the same time, and try a drink that tastes amazing. The top reviews on Trustpilot speak for themselves, but let's get back to the video. So Donald Trump doesn't get a quick victory. At the same time, the oil price rises, which hurts the world economy and therefore also the US. With rising oil prices and a prolonged war, a Republican defeat in the midterms becomes more and more likely. So Trump comes under pressure both economically and politically. He wants to make a big move to end the war quickly. This is typical behavior in wars, seeking a decisive battle to force the enemy to its knees, so you don't have to fight a long, exhausting war. The way Trump will most likely choose to do this is by targeting Khark Island. Trump therefore believes that a ground invasion will enable him to achieve victory and force Iran to make concessions. Khark Island, which is up here, is the most likely option to force Iran to make concessions. At the same time, however, it is also the most dangerous way to try this. Over 90% of Iran's oil is exported from Khark. The capacity is actually greater than what is currently being exported. So in principle, much more can be exported from the island if Iran is able to pump the oil there, if there are enough tankers, and of course, if there are enough customers. The US can, of course, shut down the other export options that exist but are limited by occupying islands or bombing oil pumping facilities. After that, Iran would only have the choice to export oil through the US or not at all. Militarily, capturing the island with 2 amphibious task forces and the 82nd Airborne Division is certainly doable. But what happens then? What happens afterwards? If the shelling of the island from the mainland continues, and that should be the case, then eventually there will be pressure to land on the mainland as well, in order to protect the island from attacks coming from this region here. Then a classic mission creep would occur, especially because the troops stationed here would also come under fire, precisely from further back in the rear area, and that would create pressure each time to advance further, to go up to the next hill, and so on, in order not to be constantly exposed to enemy fire. That's classic mission creep, meaning an expansion of the mission that actually wasn't planned at all, in which the US gets drawn deeper and deeper into the war, and involuntarily escalates it further and further, which is exactly what they want to avoid, especially if they don't want to start and fight another endless war in the Middle East. The other issue is, of course, the oil weapon. What if Iran actually refuses to cooperate? The government itself is bankrupt and needs the oil revenues. But Trump is currently allowing Iranian oil tankers to pass and has even suspended sanctions against them to stabilize oil prices. So the Iranian tankers are currently selling oil at higher prices. And while the Iranians' oil is being sold, the oil from the Gulf states allied with the US is not. Because of the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, it's not on the world market, at least not in nearly the same quantity. So Trump is allowing Iran to sell its oil, but the oil of his allies isn't being sold, because he wants to keep the oil price below $100 if possible. But what if the occupation of Rock Island doesn't lead to the regime's surrender, but instead is combined with a tougher enforcement at the Strait of Hormuz? Because Iran can basically say, if you don't let our oil through, why should we let the oil of others through? And then stop even what is still getting through now. So what if Iran says, either you let our oil through unhindered, or you won't get any oil at all? In that case, the US would either have to give in or occupy the Iranian side of the Strait of Hormuz. So, land here accordingly, in order to reduce or, if possible, stop the shelling of ships in the Strait of Hormuz. That would be mission creep again, meaning another expansion of the mission that wasn't planned at all. Iran has also announced retaliation for that. Through its state news agencies, Iran has explicitly announced in several places what will be attacked if the island of Rock is attacked and captured. Iran mentions numerous power plants, for example, but also desalination plants as a possibility. So Iran is not backing down, but is loudly declaring that it will not be defeated and that it will strike back. Fast News has even published the plans, as we can see, showing what is supposed to be attacked. So how will this all end? It doesn't matter how extensive Iran's announced retaliation will be, and it doesn't matter how successful these attempts at retaliation are. The more important question is, will Iran be defeated by that? If Iran can no longer export oil, then it has little reason to allow others to export. So this is the best way to maximize oil prices if you want to try to bring Iran to its knees in this way, and it doesn't give in. So if an occupation happens, it will force Iran to give up the war. In the end, it will be a contest between Iran and the US to see who can hold out longer. Iran, how long it can hold out without oil revenues, and the US, how long it can endure losses in Iraq and astronomical oil prices, who has more staying power. And while the Iranian regime certainly can't keep fighting indefinitely without oil revenues, the occupation of Iraq probably won't bring a US victory in the short to medium term, if Iran doesn't want to give in for internal reasons. So the US would have to inflict constant losses on Iranian soil at enormous oil prices if it comes to that, until Iran gives in. And if the US withdraws without a clear victory, because Trump realizes it can't go on like this, he can't handle oil prices at 150, 160, 180, or even $200, he'll lose the midterm elections badly, and he has to end the war now. So if he withdraws without having visibly defeated Iran, with verifiable, openly recognizable agreements, then that will clearly be understood as an Iranian victory. And then the US withdrawal, which of course would have to happen, will also be presented by Iran as a victory, which we have to say wouldn't be entirely wrong. So if the US now occupies Khark Island, it's their opportunity to influence the war in this way, and maybe even win it. But at the same time, The risk for the US in this conflict increases enormously. They are taking a much greater risk of being drawn into a long war that, practically speaking, they can hardly win without Iranian help, and which could therefore end in a disaster for the US. How do you think the war will end? Can Trump win it? If so, how? Write it in the comments. If you liked the video, I appreciate a thumbs up. Leave a comment if you have something to add. If you're new here, I'd like to invite you to subscribe to the channel and click the bell so you don't miss future videos. The next livestream with a situation report on the Ukraine war and the Persian Gulf will be tomorrow at 8 p.m. German time. There will also be a Q&A session so you can ask your questions directly if you join. If you don't want to miss it, subscribe to the channel. That's all from me for now. Thank you for your attention and see you soon. Thanks to supporters through memberships here and on Patreon. I would especially like to thank Lieutenant Colonel Mahamori, as well as Lieutenants Jans vom Eck, Uwe de Fram, nickname 2Bib Karsten Schultz, T-Killer 42, Alex Rosenthal, Matt Best, Vision, Soundlab, Sick Writer, Bertainment, Robert Veal, Matt Burke, Motor 1000 Janice Gu, Anti-X, Sasha Muller, Cunningham 4500 and Eustress. Thank you very much. Without them, this wouldn't be possible.